we're gonna go ahead and make the hanky as you requested. So let me go ahead and show you how to do this. I don't break my machine first. All right, so what you're gonna wanna do is get that interfacing that I told you about. And then you're gonna wanna cut it to a particular size. So I don't know if you use scissors or a rotary cutter or what, but if you plan on doing sewing, I recommend going to Joann's, get one of those coupons that you get a lot of coupons over the holidays. Get a cutting mat and a rotary cutter because it'll save your life big time. Okay, so I'm just gonna cut here, and I'm not gonna be too particular because I don't really care. So get a rotary cutter, and then what I would recommend, instead of getting a bunch of rotary rulers for your project, go to Lowe's, have them cut you a piece of plexiglass the size that you need. So if your fabrics aren't washed and pre-shrunk, you'll wanna either wash them and pre-shrink them, which I don't recommend, or you can cut them about 1/2 inch to 1 inch bigger than what you're looking for, okay? So I'm just gonna use a 10-inch template to show you, but what you'll wanna do is cut your interfacing a little bit smaller than you would cut your hanky square. So I'm going to line it up about 1/4 inch. I just drew, you can see all my lines with Sharpie. 1/4 inch and 1 inch. Okay, not too specific, but you can put interfacing on that one side that you said the fabric isn't quite big enough. You're fine, I'm just filming something for Anthony. And then you'll use your jig to cut out the square of your fabric. So you'll need 2 squares of fabric, one for the front, one for the back. That pulled a lot. Make sure you have a fresh blade or it's going to screw everything up. I don't know if you measure and cut with scissors or what, but I would recommend getting a rotary cutter. Okay, so doesn't want to cut that part of the fabric. So I've got my 2 squares and I've got my interfacing. So I'm going to take my fabric that you said was the light weave that isn't going to work for your hanky. Take that interfacing. It's got one smooth side and then one bumpy side. Put the bumpy side on the wrong side of your fabric. This part's going to go inside your hanky. It's a little bit smaller than that, and you're going to iron it down. As you iron it, I would hold the iron for 10 seconds or so in each spot so that it helps to melt the glue all around. Don't want to iron over my mat because I don't want to warp it. But see, this is the right side of my fabric with the print, and this is the wrong side. So you can kind of see how it's a little more rigid than this side. As this gets washed and used, it'll break down and become a little more pliable. So we've got the right sides of our fabric for our hanky. We've got interfacing on the thin side. The other side is the fabric that we don't need the interfacing on. Put them right sides together. You can pin them if you don't trust your hand skills. You're just going to go around 1/4 inch, so you got to set your seam width from the needle to the edge, or if you've got one of those fancy little feet that has the bottom, you can use that too. And by that, I mean this foot. It's got a little sled on the side, so you can just line your fabrics up next to it as you sew, and you don't have to worry about your seam as much. The thread you're using to sew the inside, given that you're using a white fabric, should probably be white, not black like I'm using. But you'll just start on one side and go all the way around. When you get to the corner, stop about 1/4 inch away and turn and sew. Make sure your fabrics aren't getting away from each other. Still let the dogs out, please. I'm probably sewing like 1/3 of an inch. You don't need that much. I just was too lazy to move my needle over. Okay, so as we're nearing the other side, whenever you get to the part where you're going to finish with your pocket, because you leave a pocket to turn it the right side out, you're going to backstitch. So right now my fabric's pulling this way. Now my fabric's going to push towards me, and it's going to lock those stitches together so that they don't come apart. And you want to leave probably 1 inch or 2 inches. Okay, so you're going to want to start somewhere in the middle, sew all the way around, and finish about 1 inch to 2 inches away. And you want to back stitch on these so that it locks your stitches down and they don't come apart. Before you fold this inside out, you're going to want to take some scissors and cut these corners across. Be careful not to cut where your thread intersects at all. Cut just above it, just by a little bit, okay? And what that's going to do is when you flip it inside out, it's less bulk in your corners so you don't have big heavy knots. So now that we've got this good to go, right sides together, you got that little part in there, you're just going to, I like stick my thumb as deep into it as I can get it, get one of the corners, push it right side out, and pull it through. I like to use my hands to get the majority of it out, and then once it's pretty much flipped and looks like a mess, I have a little crochet hook. You could take a chopstick or something, and I take that and I use it to push the corner out so that it's more square, because if you don't, let's see if I just, what it looks like if I just use my finger. You'll end up with a corner that looks more like this than a corner that looks like this. Okay? So you just stick that in a little hole and get each corner till it's as square as you can get it. And you can see kind of my threads poking through there. So it's important that you use a thread that matches as best as possible. Get them out. And just kind of like massage it in until it's done. Okay, and now I've got my little pillowcase, and you've got this little opening here. And the opening should already open up the fold, like it should be folded a bit from your sewing. So what I do is once my corners are square and my opening is kind of showing, what I'll do is take that to the ironing board and press it all down. Okay. And for this part, I would probably use an invisible thread, but I would, and you could do that at the very, very end. You don't have to do that right now, but you would take an invisible thread and just either stitch along the outside to make it easy for you, or you could hand stitch that part closed. Or if you stitch really close to the edge with your decorative stitch on the outside, you don't actually have to sew that part closed at all because it will be closed. So I'll go ahead and I can move my needle over. I don't know if you have that option on your sewing machine at home. So I move my needle over to the side so that it's closer to where I'm sewing. Then I just line up my handkerchief. When you get to the corner, stop and turn. You want to stop with your needle down and turn it. So now I've sewn all the way around and I just need to find that area. So right here is the area where my little pocket was. So you can see how this part doesn't open and this part does, but you can't see any raw edges of my fabric. So it's sealed and it's closed. So you don't actually have to stitch that down if you don't want to, but you could. And so now that it's stitched, I have that little decorative line in there, and so that just makes it look a little prettier. But it is a little bit stiffer than like a traditional hanky till you wash it. So that should get you going for getting your hanky done. I hope that helps. Happy sewing, bro.